It's Will Sean Podcast. The internet cried out for two more blowhards, and they courageously answered that call. Armed with the weapon of wit, each week they're joined by guests to discuss movies, television, pop culture, and anything else that's pissing them off. Take it away, boys.
I'm Will Link.
And I'm Sean David.
And this is Will Sean Podcast.
It's a new year, new opportunity, same old problems. Time is an illusion, people. How you doing, Will?
So, I'm a little worried that I'm getting sick.
Good.
I have like a little tickle in my throat. And I realize I can't remember the last time I didn't get sick the first week of a year.
Now, did you hit New Year's really hard this year?
I hit the night before New Year's really hard. Let me tell you quickly about the night before New Year's. I was feeling a little blue.
Yeah.
I was with Megan Hayes, who former guest and future guest, actually, of the show.
Spoiler alert.
And she was like, I'm buying you some drinks.
Yeah.
And then we kept drinking, and then we kept drinking. And then she said, you know what will make us happy if we go see La La Land? And I said, I've already seen it twice. And she goes, so have I. And then she forced me to drunkenly go see La La Land, where we drank more.
Okay.
So that night I hit it pretty hard. New Year's Eve, I just
How was La La Land? Totally drunk.
It was the same as sober.
Okay. Well, you know, you should have seen drunk. Should have gotten really drunk to go see Silence or Manchester by the Sea.
I kill myself. I see Silence.
So you had a good time. You know what I think it is? Maybe it's because you always go home to the East Coast for Christmas and you're not used to the cold weather. And so you get between the travel and being in the cold weather.
And then the drinking.
I think that's what does it to you. So maybe next year you go home after New Year's. Flights will be cheaper anyway. Just do Christmas after New Year's. Be like the Greek Orthodox.
I want to do Christmas in July.
Well, okay.
What's going on in the world of Will Sean Podcast?
New year, new opportunities to make sure you're all subscribed to us on iTunes. Make sure you all give us that 5-star rating. Leave us a comment, leave a note, and, generally be a good citizen of podcast land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We like our good citizens of podcast land.
What else is going on? I don't know. I feel like all of our ex-guests have things cooking.
Yeah.
Justin Marks has a new TV series that's currently filming that'll be coming on later this year. I don't remember what it's called.
Nick Wetzler's on Chicago PD.
Is that, we sure that's the one?
That's the one.
Okay.
There was somebody else that I'm like, we have to give this person a shout out of what they're doing, and now I can't remember. Oh, our friends over at the Off the Cuffs podcast.
Yeah.
They're doing great.
What are they doing?
They're like, that podcast, everybody in the world loves that podcast.
Well, you know what, because they talk about sex.
They've been doing
complain
their
about
podcast
sex.
like 3 years less than we have. And they've probably got 20 times more listeners.
Well, you know why? Because they're niche. We're generalists, okay? We are all things to all people. There are some things to some people in the greater Long Island area.
And who is our sponsor this week?
Cast iron skillets, that piece of cookware you will never, ever be able to use because it's scientifically impossible to properly season it.
Did you get a cast iron skillet?
What do you think I was poking at with my finger?
Well, it was rhetorical for the listeners.
Okay. No, that just popped into my head today. And that's what my apartment smells like, burnt olive oil.
On the show today, Rogue One.
Yes.
It's a couple weeks old, but we're going to finally talk about, we're going to break it down. We're going to break down all your Rogue One needs, because now is the time where we can spoil shit. Because if you haven't seen it now, you're not really a Star Wars fan, so go fuck yourself. Speaking of Star Wars, Carrie Fisher died, George Michaels died, Debbie Reynolds died.
One of those three has something to do with Star Wars.
All since we did our last podcast where we're like, well, hopefully no one else will die. This all happened.
You know what this means? So far, 2017 has been very kind. Although David Bowie didn't go to like the second week of January.
And finally, Time Warner Cable is now Spectrum. And Spectrum is a piece of shit. We will discuss. But first, we are very excited to have with us a very talented writer and a hell of a guy, Dan Freeman.
Hello.
Oh, that's it. And that's a wrap. Thank you.
Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man.
Before we get into the story you have written, Real Empathy, I want to talk about you.
Please.
I always like to get the guest's origin story. Where are you from originally?
I am from New Hampshire originally.
Really?
You're surprised?
I don't know. Have we ever had a Live Free or Dire?
Have you?
I don't know.
Oh.
We're very we mix in. We're very you never know if we're here.
We should make you wear something on your clothing to identify.
Just
you.
brand our foreheads.
Okay, so you grew up in New Hampshire?
I did. I grew up in New Hampshire, born and raised, and moved to Southern California for schooling of the film variety.
Yes.
So did you always want to get out of did you always want to go like to beautiful California? And was that something you had always thought about?
It's funny. New Hampshire was always boring to me.
Yeah.
And people ask me,
crazy Vermont.
Right? No, they're wild over there. And people always are like, "Oh, what's it like living in New Hampshire?" And I get really bratty about it, and I'm always like, "Oh, it's so boring, and there's all these trees." And then recently, I realized I haven't lived in New Hampshire in 13 years.
Yeah.
And I've never lived in New Hampshire as an adult. So I have no idea what New Hampshire is.
So you don't know
like.
anything about New Hampshire.
Correct. I don't know
Okay.
what this new exciting Hampshire everyone's
They turned
talking
Manchester. I heard it's popping now.
about. Actually, Manchester is popping now.
It's the Manchester not by the sea.
Yeah, that's true. Did I always want to get out? Kinda. I was always certainly the last few years of high school. I was kind of
You're like, I'm
ready
done.
for. Yeah, I was ready for something else. And then once I really figured out that film was my jam, I was like, well, I guess I'll go to L.A.
Had you ever been here before you came out to college?
only to look at schools.
Okay.
So, and that was a very brief trip with my mom.
Real quick, I just have to say this about the boredom of New Hampshire.
Yeah.
So a few years back, a friend of mine got married. He was marrying a girl from New Hampshire, so the wedding was in New Hampshire.
Was it boring?
I went to New Hampshire for a weekend, and it was in the fall,
Oh, very pretty. Everyone will say that.
and it was this little town. And I remember me and my friend
Called New Hampshire.
Yeah,
Do you remember what town it was?
I can't remember.
Okay.
But me and my friend Larissa, we were there in town for the wedding, and then we woke up in the morning.
Oh,
and
they're still talking about you and Larissa in New Hampshire.
Yeah, we walked to this little town. We walked to a little bakery.
Got a covered bridge.
Yeah, and when we got, and there was like a little river, and there was like a mill, and it was gorgeous. And we're sitting there eating a fucking muffin, and Larissa goes, "This is so beautiful. I love this place. I could live here." And I turned to her. I said, "It's really beautiful, and if I lived here, I'd shoot myself."
Yeah.
Because I couldn't do this every day. There was one movie theater, and it had one screen.
But it's the kind of place where maybe you'd get like a little vacation place and go up there for.
That's not my kind of vacation.
Well, all right.
Yeah, but there's other towns there with more nicer movie
They have
theaters.
2 screen theaters.
The movie theaters improved vastly. I actually worked at a movie theater in New Hampshire growing up, and it was some of my most favorite experiences because I got free movies.
There you go.
I got to see Triple X early. You know?
Wait, Triple X or Triple X: The Return of Xander Cage?
Well, I mean, I'd like to say the latter because that would mean I'm time traveling, but no, it was the first
No,
one.
State of the Union was Triple X2. The new one is Return of Xander Cage. Sorry.
Right, yeah.
Clarify that for the
Because
audience.
he had to return because Ice Cube took over the park.
Yeah.
Right.
He was the Renner of the Triple X franchise.
Okay.
That's a hard life.
So you moved out here.
I moved out
for
here.
School. What school you got to?
I went to a place that is now no longer in existence called Brooks Institute.
Why is it no longer in existence?
Brooks was there.
Good. You're Shawshanking me. So Brooks was a for-profit institution. And while I valued the education I got there, they were not without their scandals. And I think, I don't have a lot of the details, and I don't want to speak out, but I think a variety of circumstances led the owners to discern that it was time to just stop.
So what you're saying is you're still party to an active class action lawsuit.
I cannot speak.
Okay.
So now you go to film school out here.
I went to film school. I went to a 3-year school because I'd heard about all these dues everyone had to pay, and I thought, hey, if I can get my BA in film production a year early and get out and start paying those dues, I'll be out ahead of everybody. That's what I thought until I graduated into a writer's strike. And that year, I'm dating myself, but that year would have been really nice to just be, in dorm housing and not have to worry about, like rent or anything.
That strike. I wrote this amazing screenplay that specced right at the writer's strike. And nothing so that writer's strike, it affected everything. We're still feeling some effects from it.
Yeah, I don't actually think the film industry ever recovered. TV has obviously come back times a million, but I don't think they ever went back to the way they were, especially in terms of the spec market. Now it's just sort of blockbusters and indies and the middle class of films.
But is that because of the writer's strike, or is that because the studios realized that it was more profitable to make multi-film IP-friendly corporate franchises?
I think they realized that because of the strike. I think the strike was sort of the catalyst, or definitely sort of threw them into that. Because I think the movies that still made money during the strike were blockbusters. You know, like Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen.
Underrated.
So, what was your first job then out of film school in the film industry?
Oh, man, well, because of the strike, and the interesting thing about the strike is, you know, logic would say, okay, so there's a strike, and then it wraps up, and then you get your job. But the way it actually went down, at least for me, was there was the strike, and then there was the financial collapse, and then SAG almost struck. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Do you remember SAG was like, we might strike. And because of that, jobs just weren't really happening until about 2009. And in 2009, they were looking at people that graduated 08, people that graduated 09. They wanted these fresh people. And whenever I'd interview, even though it was entry level, they were still like, you graduated 07. What were you doing?
You're all worn up. And
yeah, where have you been? And it's kind of like, where have you been, motherfucker? I was trying to survive.
It's like you had this window,
right?
And the window passed, and it was nothing you even did.
And then I was tainted goods.
So then what job did you end up eventually? Because I know you've been like an assistant and stuff like that.
I've done some stuff.
You've worked at like agencies as an assistant, right?
I have seen some shit.
You've seen things, yeah. That seems like the job where you would see things.
Yeah, I've seen things. I got my entry-level gig in talent management, and that was interesting. I was hired as their runner. It took me till 2010, by the way. In 2010, I was hired by a boutique talent management company, and they were gracious enough to employ me despite my used goods elements. And I was their runner, which was a pretty nice job because there wasn't a ton of responsibility. It was salaried. I got benefits. I spent a lot of time in my car doing errands, so I got to listen to music and be creative. It was very, the ship wasn't going to sink because of me, and as such, it was easy to enjoy it. But after 3 months, they promoted me to the president of the company's desk.
Good.
And that was not quite as stress-free. And the ship could have sunk because of me, and that I did for about 2 years after that. Okay. From there, I hopped over to a literary department in a talent agency, and I hung around there for about 2.5 years. And from there, I went to work for a producer of films and television, worked with her for a bit over a year, and then I went out on my own to do this writing thing full time. And that brings us to today. That brings us to right now.
Because you've done you've consulted on people, you've given notes.
I do that.
Worked out like that.
It's because it turns out my landlord doesn't actually accept writing aspirations for rent, so I do have to pay him also for food and such. So
you can't pay him with a poem?
No, I tried once, and he said, "What are you doing, and where are your pants?" And I went back home and looked for some consulting work. So I also, for writers of any kind, producers and directors as well, I also provide them feedback on the material, help them develop it. My strange career trajectory has sort of given me a strange insight into material because I've seen it from so many different angles, so I can really help folks with their stuff.
Now, I've done similar work. I did stuff like this for the writer's store before and stuff like that. Do you find, because I certainly did, do you find that it has improved your own writing? Like doing this and for me personally, I found that consulting on people's scripts or giving script notes would make me I would find these patterns in their stuff, and it would make me able to catch things in my own work. Maybe not in my first draft, but when I would reread them, I just did that thing I accuse everyone else of doing and tell them it's bad.
For sure, because you don't want to be the guy who calls people out on stuff and then does it yourself, because then you're a douchebag. I will say, actually, not just other people's material in sort of a consulting capacity, but I credit any storytelling ability I have to a good friend of mine, the first friend I made in college, who is still my closest friend now, who would show me stuff, show me classic films, new films, foreign films, take me to the movie, like constantly showing me stuff. And I was allowed to not like anything, no matter how critically acclaimed or beloved it was, as long as I could back it up. But even if it was critically panned, and he showed it to me, and he said, "Did you like it?" I said no. He'd say, "Why not?" And if I couldn't answer it, he took me to the mat. "You tell me why you didn't like it."
And so what I did, abusive relationship. Blink twice if you need help.
But you know what? I love that, because that's what drives me crazy. When I talk to you, Sean, or some of other close friends of ours, like, if you don't like something, you're able to tell me why.
Yeah.
And I might agree with it, and sometimes we'll yell at each other about it, but at least it's an answer. I hate when someone's like, just didn't like it.
I just didn't like it. I just didn't like it. And that's...
Just don't like it.
And, there are no such thing as wrong opinions.
Yes,
but there are, and those people have them. And it's like, no, you gotta... There are things to look for that you can specifically state when describing whether or not you did or did not like something.
I had an excellent professor in college who would ask a question about it was like a film and literature class, and he would ask a question. He goes, "And just so you know, yes, there are wrong answers."
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
that's good. Because fuck no wrong answers. There's wrong answers. Yeah. Your opinion can be wrong.
Admittedly, I think, though, in my life, I've probably seen some movies that are so just middlingly like nothing that it's harder to come up with that. I mean, you can always come up with the answer, but sometimes that is because there are movies that aren't offering.
And so like in American Pie 2.
Yeah, it's like, what do I say? Actually, you know, and I remember walking out of that, and I made a strong argument as to why it was better than American Pie 1. So that one I was able to break down. But, and that to me is the worst thing. Just the thing that's just so painfully average. And let me ask you this also, as someone who's probably read a lot of bad scripts, but also probably some good scripts. I would much rather read the worst script ever written than just a middling script.
But a man with a seal friend?
You know, it was an eye-opening experience for me when I was working for the writer's store. And I guess this is going to be a question without getting into specifics about your clients, but like about your clients. I assumed when I started working for the writer's store that every script I was reading was some like asshole sitting in a coffee shop in Silver Lake banging out a script. And then one day I had gotten a note back. I was fair but hard on the script, and I got a note back from this guy who said, like, my son is going to film school. He read this, and he said, "Dad, don't quit your day job." He's like, "But I really feel I have a story to tell, and I really feel like..." And at that moment, I was like, oh, this is some guy who's probably, in his 40s or 50s, who's always wanted to write something, and it's the first thing he wrote. And all of a sudden it made me think, like, there are so many people trying to do this, and I would never want to discourage any of them from trying to tell their story. Like, do you know, like, or do you have like a variety of
or are they just the assholes with the keyboards?
Not the assholes, but like, do you find that you have a wide variety of people, or a bigger variety than you thought you would have?
So this is actually very interesting, because the people that hire me explicitly, like they reach out through my website and they engage my services directly, so far every single one of them has been someone with a story to tell, open to feedback. Some people were like, I'd love to write professionally. That's my goal. But it never feels like, just some schmuck at a Starbucks typing away. Working for various websites, which will remain unnamed, I do feel like there's a lot more attitude, because there are some where I have accurately written up sort of things that worked and didn't work about the material, and have what they would do is they would nitpick those things to find any missed comma, any typo, any
to turn it back on you.
To go to my superior and be like, he didn't do a good enough job, I want new cover. Instead of reading that and going, my dialogue needs some work, my structure is off, and my formatting is incorrect.
It's everyone else is wrong.
Right. I'm really great. This guy's wrong. I want someone else to read this.
And someone else who will probably come back with the same exact...
Right, with same feedback.
Yeah.
But Anyone who's hired me directly has always, and you get nervous when you read someone's material, and I've never, not yet, read a script where I returned someone's money and said I can't help you. That hasn't happened. So whenever I'm talking to any client, I always get a little nervous that they're gonna sort of, I'm telling them that their baby isn't the most beautiful baby in the world, and so far every single one has been extremely receptive. That's why they came to me. They know they've got this thing. They know it needs some work, but they need some direction from someone who's read a lot, which is nice, as opposed to the other people who are like, I think you're wrong.
Well, Dan, it sounds like you have some real empathy.
Oh, great segue.
There we go. You're not supposed to draw attention to how the sausage is made.
Look at that. So yeah, you as a writer, you just self-published a piece.
I did.
Real Empathy. Tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. Okay. So,
well, just say this is what you call a true-ish, shortish story.
Yes.
Now, this feels like I read it today.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for reading it.
So this feels more like the first chapter of a much larger work.
Yeah.
In that case, it's a short story in that we're just getting one chunk of it, but eventually it's not going to be a shortish story. Can I imagine?
I think there will be a series of shortish, truish stories
that
I'm going to tell about this character that follow a larger story.
Okay.
This is most definitely, episode 1 or the first issue or the pilot or however you want to look at it.
So who is this character? Tell us about it.
Well, so this character's me, which is,
What?
I know, right? I've written a decent number of things, and there's two expressions I really don't like. One is every joke has a little bit of truth in it. That's just false. I make tons of jokes because they're explicitly false and not true, and that's what makes them
And you've never
funny.
done anything to a dead baby.
Right, I've never done anything to a dead. I'm not gay, Mom. But the other one is that every character is a little bit you. And that's another thing where I'm like, I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
There's certainly some characters I've written that have elements of me, certain personality traits have carried over. This guy in this book is 100% in every way.
Yeah.
This is how my mind works. This is my thought process as I go through the day. This guy is me. And a lot of the things he's experienced, I have experienced.
Okay.
So who's that guy? He's me. And I guess...
Well, okay, so it's you, but give us a little bit of what
that means.
What happens. Obviously, since it is a short-ish story, we don't want you to tell us
the whole
thing, but wet the people's whistle a little bit here.
Sure. Okay, so I'm trying to think about how mysterious I want to get about it and how much I want to try and hook people. Basically, as a child, as a 9-year-old, I had an incredibly traumatic, unique experience that has not followed me, but basically formed me into who I am and has consistently influenced everything I've ever done.
So the character in this story has had a experience that, if what you're telling us is true, is identical to the one that you suffered from.
Yes.
But what he takes out of it is something a little bit more mysterious and supernatural, which I'm going to assume is not necessarily the level you found yourself at as an adult.
Yeah, so I guess it's not a spoiler to say the guy has some empathy, given that it's in the title. When I wrote up the blurb for Amazon, I tried to talk around that and then realized, oh, wait, I think people are going to think there's empathy in this book.
Yeah.
It's called Real Empathy. So in real life, I'm a very empathetic person, to, at times, a debilitating degree. Also in my life, I had this extremely traumatic experience. I do think they're related, but in the book, I thought it'd be much more interesting if there was a lot clearer cause and effect. And I thought it'd be more interesting if I dialed that empathy up a few more notches.
To where it plays to a level which is, I don't want to say superhero because that's not quite the right level.
It is I say it's a superhero level because it's a superhero parallel. This is the origin of an everyday superhero on the real planet Earth without any supervillains.
The origin of an emotional superhero.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a guy who's trying to save everybody to save himself.
Okay.
And I don't know how much more we should get into in terms of what the traumatic event is because it's kind of slowly revealed over the story.
Yeah.
But Volume 1 covers sort of the inciting incident where And I do have PTSD, which this character has. The inciting incident is basically all of his memories kind of start getting unlocked all at the same time out of nowhere. And he's got both sort of this mystery to figure out of what happened to me. He always knew something happened, but he didn't know what. And now it's kind of all coming back too fast.
Now, this is fairly new that you put this out.
Yeah.
But since this is something you've kind of dealt with in your life, have you always been kind of trying to tell a version of this story?
Absolutely. How many scripts have pieces of this in it, or you know?
So I have actually I have a pilot that's being taken out now that has a lot of the empathy in it.
Okay.
And I sort of refer to this as the other side of that coin.
Okay.
I always felt I was going to tell this story. I kind of thought I was going to have to at some point, and I really hoped there'd be sort of everyone's got their one sort of golden thing they're maybe remembered for, and I always suspected this might be it. But I tried writing this as a feature film about 4 or 5 years ago, and I was not ready. And that, I feel like that's a little pretentious, so I'll try to explain. Putting myself in that mindset, really, because the truth is, I don't have a lot of memories from that period of time, and they are fractured. And when I think about them, it is often like I am reliving them. Sometimes a memory will bubble up, and it's like I'm there all over again, 20 years ago. So putting myself in that mindset is not comfortable. And I had not yet had the therapy I've had since that got me to a place where I was more comfortable with it. So for a few weeks, I really dove deep and just realized I'm not ready to do this yet. I'll do this. I'm going to come back. And I continued therapy. I've been in therapy ever since, basically, on and off. And I continued therapy in the last couple years. I made enough progress sort of wrapping my head around what happened to say, you know what, I think I'm ready to tell the story. So the character of Zan is actually me a few years ago. And in volume 2, which I'm in the process of writing now,
I was going to ask,
he's still behind me. And I tell people about it, and I could see them look at me with this kind of concern. Yeah. And I'm like, I get it. I appreciate it. This is out of date. This isn't the newest version. This is not where I am now.
This is Obama second term.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, let me ask you this.
Sure.
So you're doing a volume 2.
Yes.
Do you plan on keep going beyond that? I mean, is this... And then my next question is, are you going to put out each volume as you finish them? Or is there going to come a point where you try to put them all together as just a collection? Like, what
are you green-miling this?
Yeah.
I am going to put them out as I finish them. I know that there will be at least 3, maybe 4, and maybe more after that. I have a long form character arc that I know. I know where Zan starts, I know where he goes, and I know where he ends. And I've got a whole number of true anecdotes that are really interesting that I know I'm going to use at some point.
Okay.
And so I know I've got about 3 or 4 volumes to get him from A to Z. And then after that, I think there's probably room for ongoing stories as I feel them, as I see something.
Sidekicks.
Yeah. I got to get him as Robin,
So is this,
Well, I was going to say about the publishing of it.
Yes.
Yeah. Because you self-published it, put it on Amazon.
I did.
Was there ever a thought of trying to go a different way than that? Or was the idea always to self-publish it and just put it out there immediately?
So the process of publishing this was also uniquely frustrating for me. I finished this well before the election. And it was written, originally it was conceived as a pilot. I wanted to do this as a TV show, because I do think there's a TV show in there, which is why the first volume feels a lot like the first episode of a show, is because that was the outline for the show. And my brilliant manager, brilliant non-sarcastically, my brilliant manager said, hey, this town's IP driven now. Yeah. That's a great idea. It's super personal. Why don't you write it as a short story and we'll throw it online? So the plan was always to distribute it on the internet in some method, but originally when we were talking about it, we were thinking maybe like Huffington Post or maybe like a short story central.
But you need something with a little bit more robust platform because it's a longer piece.
well, yeah, but actually I finished it and everyone was talking about the election. And it was like there was no way an article that wasn't politically centered or a short, like, I didn't think we'd get traction. I thought we were going to get drowned out. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to wait till the week after the election when Hillary wins and all this goes away and everything settles down and everything goes back to normal. And then obviously that's not what happened. And I actually sat on this. Originally, I was going to release it the week before people traveled for Thanksgiving because I thought, oh, okay.
I'll read it. Yeah.
Get it on a flight, get it on the train, get it on the bus. You know, it's Kindle. It's everywhere. And then I waited until the week before everyone traveled for Christmas because that's how long it took before social media kind of.
Yeah, it still isn't.
Yeah,
We've had the problem with this podcast because we always talk about pop culture topics and there was nothing else to talk about but Trump, you know?
And that's no one wanted to. I didn't want to talk about him anymore. I was like, I would very much like to go sit in the corner and stare at a blank wall instead. I've had enough of him.
Oh well.
Lucky me.
Can I give you an orange wall?
Yeah, Roy.
Okay, so now it's up there on Amazon.
It's up there. Please buy my book.
Well, let's get to that part.
Yeah, please buy my book.
If the people want to buy this book, what do they do? How do they do it? Where do they go?
So, little known fact, a lot of people that I tell I wrote a Kindle book say, oh, I don't have a Kindle. There are free Kindle apps for literally everything.
Yep.
For Apple, for Microsoft, for Google.
For Japanese toilets.
If you are at a Japanese toilet and want to read my book, 2 pieces of shit for the price of 1. Hey!
Oh,
You're really selling the sizzle
fun.
there.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, if the book is nothing if not self-deprecating, so it fits. So you can get the free app and then just go to Amazon.com and look up Real Empathy. It's $1.99. You know
that's a steal.
No, a steal would be getting it for free.
Yeah, or just email me.
Yeah.
Oh, whatever. No, it's go to Amazon. You can read it on there. Read it on their virtual Kindle thing, or read it on your own Kindle. Or
And if you're a good listener of the podcast, you have already bought this book. You have already read this book because we will have a link to Amazon and to the book on our Facebook page.
oh, you guys are too good to me.
And what about your social media presence? Do they want to find you there?
Oh yeah, I'm on Twitter. My name is Dan with 2 N's, and my last name is Freeman, like Morgan Freeman, no relation.
Really?
Yeah,
Could have fooled me.
Shocking with my light complexion, but no relation. And you can find me on Twitter, on Facebook. And if you are in need of script consultation services, you can also find me at story-talk, that's storytalk with a hyphen.com.
Look at that. Well, speaking of story consulting, one script that's clearly needed some story consulting was Rogue One.
I'm so glad you said that. When you said we were going to talk about it, I was afraid you were going to fanboy it.
Well, no. I do like the movie, but I also think it's crazy that I've never seen a film where it's so obvious that reshoots and rewrites were done, if only because I've never seen a film that
It had nothing to do with the trailer?
Yeah, I've never seen a film with less material from the trailer in the actual movie.
And you could just tell when you're watching it because you're like, really? That's what Forrest Whitaker's doing in this movie?
Yeah.
That's it?
Well, he's making bold acting choices. That's what Forrest Whitaker's doing in this movie.
Well, before we get to that, let's all just kind of give our general thoughts of it. And I'll start. I actually liked it quite a bit because I think the second half is particularly strong. I think the first half is a little choppy and a little sloppy.
Yeah.
But it ends on a really high note. I think the battle on the beach at that planet is really well done. You know, I'm not the first to say it, like, puts the war in Star Wars. And we're going to get into spoilers here, so if you still haven't seen it, skip ahead like 5-10 minutes in the podcast.
Okay, what do you do? Why don't you take that time and go see the movie? It's Star Wars, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. But I think it's really ballsy that they kill everybody. For a franchise of this level, and for, they always want to, because I could already see them, another group of people might have been like, well, we need to have the further adventures of Jin and a whole bunch of side movies.
Cartoons.
So I think that was ballsy, and I think it was right. It was the only thing that made sense. And I'm also assuming that in whatever the first cut of this movie was, that these people didn't die, because you see in the trailer them on the beach. You see them escaping with the Death Star planes, like running down a corridor. All these things are not in the actual movie. So I liked it, but I'm also not sucking its dick like these people who think it's as good as Empire.
I don't understand the people that are freaking out about this movie because it's pretty, it's fun, and it hits all the right nostalgia notes. It's not a great movie. The script, I don't know if we can criticize the script because what we saw wasn't, the half of the script and the half of the reshoots they taped together had a lot of problems and things that could have been better.
I mean, look, I think the movie's biggest issue, and look, I'll own this movie. I will watch this movie again and again because it's a fucking Star Wars movie.
Of course. It's what we do.
But I think the biggest issue is I loved Force Awakens. I don't know how you felt about Force Awakens.
I liked The Force Awakens. I get everyone who sort of said, it's just a remake. I heard that, and I understood it, and decided I didn't care anyway.
I didn't care anyway either, because I think it was a good remake, and I think what it did most of all was it did a good job of establishing new characters who had legit chemistry and I legit cared about. And the thing is, I ding Rogue One a little bit because I don't care about Jyn nearly as much as I cared about Rey or Finn. I was so emotionally invested in them as people, where in Rogue One, my emotional investment, and it's there, but it's for the rebellion.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think?
Well, no, so there's a lot of things with this movie. One, it's that it's a movie that has to exist in the cracks of other things that we already know. You don't have as much... There's like shades of a more interesting movie in there. When you see Diego Luna, that's the thing, I don't remember the character's names.
Cassian.
Yeah, Cassian. When he goes and he kills that informant, the first scene we see him, and then there's later on when they decide to join with her to go to the planet, they're basically saying, like, we've had to do a lot of fucked up shit for this rebellion, and now, like, the wages of sin are come to, there's a more interesting movie in there that's even darker and grittier than what's on the final product. You don't create an emotional attachment with any of these characters. There's too many of them. The names are too weird. I didn't have enough time to like soak into the like merchandising of it all, get the action figures and everything. And, The Force Awakens is a continuation of something that we already familiar with, whereas this is just like the other side of the coin of something we're already familiar with. So it's like, here's all these things I'm familiar with, and then wait, who are all these weird people, and why do they still have wireframe models in the rebellion,
Is it even fair to judge this movie against other Star Wars movies because it's not part of the saga? Because it's their first time trying to do something? Here's the thing.
Yes, because Disney is putting this $400 million film and shoving it down our throats on Christmas and saying you will eat this until you get your next episode 8 helping. And so I think we have every right to judge it because they are releasing it on the same even-handed platform as their other movies.
Now, I will say this, though. It does... One thing I was complaining a little bit about the beginning. Like I said, I fucking love the second half of this movie. But the beginning... are part of my issues, and I haven't seen it a second time yet. I plan on seeing it a second time.
I saw it a second time.
Well, then I ask you this question, because one of my issues was, like, when the words Rogue One came on the screen.
Right.
There's this music that plays that's like, it's Star Wars off.
It's like, Star Wars adjacent.
It's close. It's a little too close to the actual Star Wars theme, but it's also different than the Star Wars.
It's like the music
theme.
On Star Wars Rebels or the music on Star Wars, the cartoons.
It threw me for a second that it's like it's trying to be Star Wars while not trying to be Star Wars.
It's Star Wars adjacent.
And I wondered if seeing it a second time, being prepared for that, would make me more forgiving. Like, if it's such a jarring thing to see a Star Wars film, which we've seen 7 of them, open differently.
I expect that if you listen to this podcast, this particular episode, in 10 years, you will have become so accustomed to the Star Wars story brand and having a similar thing where it's the brand's music, each individual, like you'll go back and be like, oh yeah, it was weird the first time, but now I know that the Star Wars spin-offs will have their own style.
Yeah.
But speaking of the beginning, if I can riff a bit here, I take serious issues with the intro. I think it's a classic and perfect example of showing us and telling us way too much for no reason. I think this movie would have benefited so much. You chop that intro where we learn, but you set up all these relationships. No, I say fuck that. Imagine if A New Hope started with Darth Vader and Obi-Wan stealing the twins away and hiding them on Tatooine, and we know, imagine that all that backstory's gone. You cut the intro from Rogue One, and you have that information come out in interesting character development, added as some dramatic questions. Who are her parents?
So they just had it started where they just kidnap her right out of the
right out of prison. That movie should have started.
That
movie should have started with her in prison and the rebellion going up to her and going like, hey, you're kind of a scoundrel, but freedom's better than jail, so go on this suicide mission for us with this weird bunch of people that's also like you, and we'll get the show on the road.
You know what? I guess that is better. I was going to defend it briefly with the idea of, well, this character's going to die. We're not going to have further adventures. So it's not like it's creating a great mystery like Luke's father's Vader.
No, but you saw it's a mystery within one movie.
You just do it in one movie.
I guess also one thing I do like about the opening scene is we get some Mads Mikkelsen, which I wish we had more of in the movie because he's an interesting character.
Well, I feel like
he's a very interesting character.
In my version of Rogue One, we would have had more of him anyway. Yeah. I mean, because it's just sort of like, you know, that relationship is quintessential, but they show you too much. You know who she is, you know what her deal is, and then the worst sin, they don't allow you to pay it off. At the end, she's rescued by the dude and doesn't get her revenge. And, you know, I get the poetic nature of leaving him to die by his own creation. But we don't even get to see that fulfilled, which I think a lot of people wanted. So, you know, I say leave it a mystery and use that as a means to bond.
But we had to get the story moving so we could see Darth Vader throwing bodies around and CGI Carrie Fisher.
Right.
But I like seeing Vader kicking some butt.
I didn't like Vader doing a bad Borscht Belt shtick in his Palace of Solitude.
It's not that bad.
You know, I either loved it or hated it, and I haven't figured it out yet. Because I see it and I'm like, yeah, and then later I'm like, yeah, and then later I'm like, and then I'm like, yeah, I can't make up my mind if I like that or not.
I'm all in on that.
I think it would have been more interesting if Darth Vader hadn't showed up to the third act and we hadn't like tipped it with him earlier in his, you know, in the Fortress of Solitude.
We got to see Darth Vader.
Who cares? This is it's the nostalgia acting.
That's actually Remember Berries.
Yeah, the Remember Berries at work.
That's actually what's interesting about seeing Rogue One a second time is the first time I walked out and I went, that was kind of... The second time, going in knowing all the story issues I had with it, I was able to enjoy what's actually good about it, which is the nostalgia.
I don't mind. And see, here's the thing. We talked about Member Berries a lot on this podcast. I don't mind Member Berries. I don't think there's anything wrong with the nostalgia. No. I don't think there's anything wrong with, there's C-3PO and R2-D2.
Actually, I loved that cameo.
Well, because Anthony Daniels signed a billion-year contract to make sure he's in every Star Wars.
But also, aren't those guys they're like the Rosencrantz and...
Yeah, they're the chorus.
Although I don't know how you fit them into the Han Solo movie.
No, if they show up in that, I'll be pissed. They worked in Rogue One because it made sense.
R2 could possibly show up somehow.
How?
I don't know. Whatever. Well, we all know that Anakin built Darth. Well, that's I don't know, like a kit the way I built an RC car when I was 11.
I also think Rogue One. Let me say this though. I do think Rogue One is a very well acted movie. Yeah. I think Felicity Jones does a great job. Mads Mikkelsen's always great. Forrest Whitaker.
What happened? What was he?
I got into an argument with a friend of mine who I guess knows better. Who said...
I wish you all could have seen Will's face when he said, I guess knows better.
Well, because he said what Forrest Whitaker is doing with that weird performance and that weird voice, and maybe it's also because I just came off seeing him in Arrival where he's also doing a weird voice for reason. I'll pay you $1,000 if you can identify what Forrest Whitaker's accent.
I think it's like Boston
is.
Adjacent or something.
But his Saw Gerrera voice, someone said, well, you know, he's mimicking and honoring the voice of this character already has on Star Wars Rebels. And I'm like, oh, fuck. Well, if that's like a character that's in canon and he's just trying to do the already unique voice this character already has, it's hard for me to be annoyed, but it's still a fucking weird voice he's doing and a weird performance. So I am still annoyed. I don't know how to feel about Forrest Whitaker as an actor anymore. I just don't.
Well, that character, and especially in Rogue One, I mean, I think part of the reason
it was more of him originally, and they cut it down.
Yeah, and I think that part of the reason you're annoyed is it just doesn't fucking make sense. Because he is for all purposes in that movie, he is a location more than a character. He is the place they all go to meet because that's where they have to go.
He's got
to
that
meet.
monster. He's got that monster that reads brains.
But we didn't even need that because the guy had a fucking tape. He's like, I'm a pilot and I have a tape from this guy, and they're like, oh look, he's got a tape from the guy. Melt his brain.
Well, that's the thing. The first half of that movie is very choppy, and in the second half, which supposedly was entirely redirected by Tony Gilroy, is much more clean cut, much more exciting, much more streamlined, and luckily it's the second half of the movie, so the movie ends with an hour of fucking awesomeness after an hour of a little wonkiness.
Well, it should have ended with a spaceship blowing up behind her while she looked at a deer.
I want to bring up two other things real fast because we can't talk about Rogue One forever.
Nope. I'm over it.
I could do it.
I could too. CGI Tarkin. So they took Peter Cushing and totally CGI'd him and to make Grand Moff Tarkin. Now, for me,
Peter Cushing, who died in like 1998.
I think even before that. Although who also said he always wished he could have been in another Star Wars movie. So he gets his wish. Now, here's the thing about Peter Cushing in this. Peter Cushing, CGI Tarkin. I simultaneously think what they did was amazing and completely terrible, like both at the same time. Like, I'm actually kind of in awe of the technology because they're getting an actual performance out of it. But because I have this awareness of this guy being dead, it's the uncanny valley thing, and I'm looking at it, and it's like, this does not look human to me. However, I had coffee with a good friend of the show and former guest Jackie Vleck yesterday, and she was like, I
love Jackie Vleck.
Oh, okay.
I know Jackie.
And she was saying how her father, who she saw it with, like, thought that was great. Didn't think, and didn't see it, and she was like, is it just that she's savvier than him, or is it like, and is that hurting us? Like, what did you think of CGI Tarkin? Because my instinct was, why bother CGIing him? We all accept that the guy was old and is dead. Just recast him with some guy who kind of looks like Peter Cushing.
I loved CGI Tarkin.
Okay.
I loved it, but wish they'd used it more sparingly.
Yeah, it's too much.
Because when I first saw him, I was like, oh, fucking cool.
Yeah.
Tarkin, because you need Tarkin. It's the Death Star. It's his thing.
Yeah.
It makes sense. And
14 minutes later.
Yeah, and it's like after a while, I'm like, okay, now I can see the pixelation. I can see the magic goes away. So I feel like what the obvious choice should have been, and I say this obviously without having been involved at all, but were I given the magic wand to make all decisions, you throw him in for a quick 1 minute convo in person, and the rest is all through hologram, so you don't have to worry about the technology wavering, and then it's all justified.
That's fine. I agree with that, and I wonder though. Yeah, I mean, I know for a fact I know people who saw this movie and didn't know who Peter Cushing is, didn't know he was. I mean, I guess they, we know these things, and it didn't I think there are some people who think it's a real person.
Yeah.
Could
just
be.
because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it.
Are you not a fan of?
No, I thought it
CGI?
was fine, but I think it was too much. I think I agree with you. It would need to be more sparingly, and I think they could have written around it so he wasn't just chilling there for long dialogue scenes.
It was really too much, and it was sort of like, guys, like. You
Get smart about writing.
You should view all of these things: Darth Vader and lightsaber rampages, Gold Leader and Blue Leader. You should CGI Leia. You should see all of these things as this sort of commodity that you just sprinkle on top. You don't want to give too much of it because then it wears off.
Okay, one last thing we have to talk about because we are running long here on this. But you mentioned it, CGI Leia, and this will transition unfortunately nicely into our next topic, but. My thought on CGI Leia was we didn't need to see her face because the face is what threw me a little bit. And I know some people who have seen the movie for the first time after. I know people who went to go see it for the first time the day Carrie Fisher died.
Yeah.
And it really threw them. Of course, you couldn't have anticipated that. But it looked off enough for me that I wish we had we could have seen Leia from the back.
Yeah.
And we could have seen, looking at the man bringing her the
And she could have put her hood down and seen, the buns or something.
And in that iconic white dress or whatever and just said, her line about hope.
Yeah.
And I think it would have had the exact same effect. and we wouldn't be slightly distracted by, oh shit, they made Carrie Fisher look young.
Well, I think because they already did the stuff with the fake Tarkin and all the Darth Vader, it's like if you said, what, you could have given us a fake Grand Moff Tarkin, I don't think anyone would have been happy, but we couldn't see Princess Leia's face for half a second. I feel like it's a losing argument.
I liked seeing her face.
Okay.
It did throw me. It did, because I was like, oh, that's a CGI fake person face. But I feel like I would have felt blue-balled if it had just been hood and buns, and I'm like, oh, it's Leia, but we don't, what, you can give us an ugly old guy? Sorry, Peter Cushing's estate. But you can't give us young Carrie Fisher? Come on.
So let's talk about Carrie Fisher here. So like on what, like day before Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
She was flying back here. She had a heart attack on a plane, and about like 4 or 5 days later, she unfortunately died.
Yeah.
This death really upset me because, we've talked about a lot of celebrities on this, but she's one of those that like I grew up with, that I grew up watching. I grew up with Princess Leia. Someone tweeted like Princess Leia was my first heroine, and granted, this is probably a bigger deal for little girls, but at the same time, someone growing up watching Star Wars, she's really probably the first strong female character I really saw on screen.
Barbarella.
And she was also a great writer, and she was just like back in the zeitgeist in a great way too, both with her writing and talk show appearance, her wit and acting.
Well, she's on the show Catastrophe. That's why she was flying back from London.
She's great on Catastrophe.
Yeah.
I thought she was always great. Like, she's great when Harry Met Sally and her sisters and the fucking Burbs. Like, she was
Brothers.
Blues Brothers. So the Carrie Fisher death hit me harder than most of the celebrity deaths last year. I think the only one that maybe equaled it for me was Bowie, because that one bothered me a lot.
I think it's...
you didn't know what you were in for at that time.
Yeah, we were just getting started. Can you imagine going back in time and being like, hey, I know you're bummed about Bowie, but just fucking wait.
But you're gonna have
a problem.
You're gonna have Gene Wilder and Carrie Fisher and Prince. They're all going this year. Muhammad Ali, they're all gone.
I think it's a tragedy that I guess I don't explicitly know both of your political opinions, but I probably can guess. I think it is that a real tragedy that at a time where a lot of people view politically sort of an absence of hope, that we would lose someone that is so like connected with the idea of hope, so much so that was the one fucking word they gave her in Rogue One was hope, and I feel like someone took.
Well, another person was very connected with hope, but he's not president anymore.
No.
And then a day later, as if that wasn't bad enough.
Okay, and then, insanity. Her mother, Debbie Reynolds, dies. Like the next day, literally of a broken heart, just like Leia's mother in the Star Wars movie dies of a broken heart.
To quote Carrie Fisher, Princess Armadillo.
Yeah, I love that. That video was so good.
I heard that you're giving some Lifetime Achievement Award to George Lucas.
Have you seen that?
Yeah.
It's so good.
So, so this I didn't know until after she died, but I guess Debbie Reynolds, Carrie Fisher, and her brother Billy Fisher.
No,
Todd.
Todd.
Oh, not Bobby.
Daughter's Billy Lord.
Right, got it. They all lived on a compound. They all had like their own houses, but they lived on an estate, and they all saw each other every day, and they were very close, and that was just like...
Well, that was the thing. We all know Carrie Fisher had some issues with her mother.
Well, she only wrote a book and made a movie out of it.
But clearly, whatever those issues were, their relationship transcended that, and, there's this documentary that's going to be airing this weekend on HBO that had already been made about their relationship.
Wishful Drinking.
No.
Oh, wait. There was...
No,
Wishful Drinking was the last
one-woman show, which was fantastic. But there's a documentary. I can't remember what it's called, but it's about Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds, and it's on HBO now. Debbie Reynolds, Singing in the Rain.
Yes.
What's the Debbie Reynolds?
Charlotte's Web.
She played the voice of Charlotte in Charlotte's Web.
I used to watch that movie every day as a kid and cry.
Was she in the Unsinkable Molly Brown?
Yeah. She's a mother, Albert Brooks' mother. And also in In and Out, she's Kevin Kline's mother.
And she played Liberace's mother in Beyond the Candelabra.
She had a real third act of her career playing mothers. You know what's so funny? Because I've been on kind of an old musical kick because of La La Land, I saw that, they do those Fathom events at AMC theaters. I saw that on 2 days this coming month, or this month now, they're playing Singing in the Rain, and I was already like, you know what, I haven't seen that since college. I should go see it on the big screen. And now that Debbie Reynolds died, I feel like I really need to go see it on the big screen.
I don't know if it's all sold out or not yet, but
it probably is now.
Think about that.
Yeah. But they're going to be showing it.
Just roll up.
But you know what? They're going to show it at the ArcLight. They're going to show up. They're going to be doing it at
and they're doing it at all the AMC theaters.
Yeah. Plus, you got to contend with Purple Rain, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, because all of those are replaying now too. The weekend
Gene Wilder died, the AMC theaters played Willy Wonka and Blazing Saddles, and I went to go see Blazing Saddles, and it was the first time I'd ever seen it in the theater with an audience. I'd seen it a million times just on my DVD or VHS. And it was so amazing to see Blazing Saddles with an audience. Everyone was laughing. Most of the people were anticipating jokes, but you could also tell the people who had never seen it because, especially there's a line early on where Harvey Korman's asking the Haggard about well, what do you do with the women? He goes, we rape the shit out of them. And you heard all these people who didn't know that, which only made me laugh harder.
It's the gasp laugh. Yeah. It's like the oh no, they didn't laugh.
Yeah, what? Someone would say that? I wouldn't be shocked though if that is the case. They add more shows to Singing in the Rain because they added Blazing. I talked to a woman who worked at the theater when Blazing Saddles Night that was playing. She goes, "Yeah, we had to add a second show of it because everyone was trying to buy tickets." Also, George Michael's died.
Yes, who's one of the great pop icons of the '80s. Late 80s, early 90s.
I saw this interview clip with him that I just freaking loved with where he's being interviewed, and I think it's Oprah, and she's just like, so you're out and gay, and aren't you worried about how that'll affect your career? And he's like, I've actually got success, I've got money, I've got a loving partner. I kind of don't need homophobes' money, so they can kind of just
Well, yeah, he basically walked away from most of it in his mid 30s. I mean, he had a amazing singer, just amazing voice, amazing performer. Go back and watch some of those music videos from late 80s, early 90s. Just next level.
Music video was great.
Yes. And then I was reading a review by Wesley Morris, or sort of a retrospective of George Michael. And I forgot how integral he was to this year's Keanu with Keegan-Michael Key.
Big role in the movie.
Big role, which I'm pretty sure he didn't even know that movie existed. But and he was talking a lot about the intersection between George Michael's music and black culture. One thing I didn't know is that his music was at the top of the black pop charts, and that he had this really strange crossover connection, the same way Van Morrison does with Latino communities for whatever, something about his music that it just transcended just being a pop icon. So there you have it. George Michael, go listen to some...
listen to Wham and then listen to his solo stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
One last thing I want to say about this, and I know we're running long, and this is kind of the more business angle of
Zsa Zsa Gabor?
No. I don't have much to say about Zsa Zsa. Although, she's another person who died this year. And I just remember she slapped a cop and then parodied that in a million things, including The Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear.
Starring O.J. Simpson.
Carrie Fisher, what do we do about Star Wars Episode 9? She's filmed Episode 8. How does this affect Star Wars?
Well, the opening crawl is Princess Leia is dead. General Organa has died. She's returned to her home planet.
You guys are going to make me cry right now.
What do you mean? By then, there's going to be a CGI Princess Leia. General Organa.
There's no way they try to CGI her for an Episode 9, right? Because
maybe for a scene.
They may just reuse old footage.
It's going to be all janky.
No, not old. I mean, footage from 8 that they don't put into 8. They may save some, and and Philip Seymour Hoffman died before the last Hunger Games.
But they'd already filmed a lot of that. They've filmed none of it.
They haven't, none. Well, they also haven't finished writing the script.
The main villain is her son, so I have to believe that she was going to play a key part in either bringing him back to the light or
Could this possibly be good for Episode 9?
No.
Okay.
It's
I
never
don't
good.
think so. Because here's the thing: we already love Episode 7. I think we're all pretty confident Episode 8's going to be great because it seems in good hands. I like Rian Johnson a lot.
Oh, he's great.
So I think I'm sure they had this great thing planned out, this great arc that I'm sure involved her in some way. And now there's a screen. Who's writing episode 9? Is Ryan Johnson writing?
No, apparently Colin Trevorrow, which means that it's going to be Tony Gilroy and Lawrence Kasdan coming in for one last ride.
Well, I'm just saying, now Colin Trevorrow's probably shitting his pants going like, Jesus Christ, what the hell am I going to do
Dinosaurs.
about this character?
I don't know that he's worried. I think he's too busy worrying about making bad movies.
Well, they can always do what they did like in the Fast 7, where she's going to do her ride off into the sunset when they come to a crossroads in the galaxy. And, yeah.
It's a problem.
Well, you got years to fix it.
And it's a problem that we're going to notice is the thing. Like, it's something that we're all going to be thinking about.
Everyone's going to be looking for it. Unless it resolves in 8 somehow.
Unless in 8, now that they know him, and that's not done yet, they could always,
do something.
So
she's on Alderaan 2 when Starkiller Base 2 attacks.
Yeah, the opening crawl for 9 will be General Organa has moved to Alderaan 2 to take over.
Shit doesn't go well. With predictable results. You know what? Alternate timelines. What if Princess Leia never existed? J.J. Abrams is coming back to direct episode 9.
Oh, that'd be interesting. I'd see that movie.
Well, of course you see that movie. It's not going to be good, but of course you see that movie. We all see that movie. They're going
to make us read a comic book prequel that fits between episode 8 and 9 to find out what happens.
Yeah.
All right.
So every year I have a little tradition at the end of the year.
Right before Christmas.
I get into a giant screaming match with Time Warner Cable when I decide to raise my rates. Every year this happens. They come along and they say, like, oh, your next bill is going to be $200, even though you're only paying $120 now for everything. And I'm like, go fuck yourself. And we yell and yell until they put me on another special offer. Well, we got this special offer that we could put you on for a year. And I'm like, just do it. And it's gotten to the point where I expect this, we go through the same joke of, I call them and I say, look, I know you're going to give this to me eventually, so let's just cut to the chase and give it to me. But now, it's no longer Time Warner Cable. It's Spectrum. It's a new era of cable. I see this on my commercials on the TV like Spectrum, like it's a new era. Maybe that's not what they say, but they basically are insinuating it's a new fucking era and Spectrum's going to be better. It's going to be a kinder, gentler company, but instead, to no one's surprise, it's fucking worse. The only people I find that I am actively verbally abusive to in the world are cable company representatives. These are the only people that I get on the phone and I'm like, your product and you are a piece of shit. Just give me the lower rates. So I get my bill and I call and I say, listen, you're going to raise my rates like $50. This is unacceptable. Just keep the same thing. And she's like, well, we can't do that because blah, blah, blah. I said, look, put me in touch with your manager. Just put your manager on the phone now. They're going to end up doing it. Just put your manager on the phone. Like, well, no, we can do this, 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 this. I'm like, look, I don't want to yell at you. I'm going to yell at you. And I say this to him. I said, I'm going to yell at you. I don't want to have to yell at you. Just put your manager through. But they wait until I have to I have to curse at them. Where I'm like, what the fuck is your problem? Just put your goddamn manager on. They put the manager on. Now, usually the manager takes care of it, but the Spectrum managers, they're fucking tricky.
It's special training.
The Spectrum managers kept talking to him. There's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. What do you mean there's nothing you can do? So I yelled at them. I said, put someone else on the phone. Put your boss on the phone. Like, there is no boss to talk to above me. I said to the manager, why should I stay with your cable company? Give me one reason why. And they said nothing. They said nothing because they know it's shit. And I said, you know it's shit. Put me in touch with somebody else. And then when we could put you in touch with, and before they even finished, I just put them on the phone. The third person started to get shit done. And this is when I found out the stupid thing about Spectrum's internet. Apparently, I don't even know what these numbers are. I have 200 something. 200.
I have 30.
I have 200 something or other. They said, well, we only offer 100 $300 now. And I said, what the fuck is this? I said, just keep the thing that I have. Just let me keep it. Like, well, no, we can't do this. Also, they're like, well, you have to select from these list of channels. And I had to, on the phone, for 20 minutes, go through every channel, make sure I wasn't losing a channel I want. It was a bunch of bullshit. But at the end of the day, they figured out a thing where I am paying the same amount that I was always paying before. Even though now I have a whole bunch of different shit I don't want. They said, do you want your telephone service? I didn't want telephone to begin with. I only have this because last year you told me it'd be cheaper if I got a telephone. Take away my telephone. Take it away. I don't want it. Like, oh, okay, we'll take it away. I don't even know my fucking telephone number. So then I said, when's the person coming to bring me my new modem and my new cable boxes and everything? And they said, we don't send people out. We just send it in a box. We'll put it in a box and send it to you. You hook it up. I said, what happened to the day where someone came and did this shit for me? I said, what am I paying you people for? I said, look, I'm going out of town at the end of the week. I don't want this stuff sitting here on my stoop while I'm out of town. Send it after Christmas. And they said, fine. 2 days before Christmas, a day before my flight, I come home, there's a big cable box, big everything. I'm like, oh, fuck, they didn't listen to me. I have to spend the whole evening trying to hook this shit up. And guess what doesn't work? Any of it. None of it works. I have to call numbers to activate things, and the things don't activate. Cut to, I'm on the phone with these people for an hour while they are sending signals to cable boxes. You are the worst, Spectrum. You're worse than Time Warner. At least Time Warner sent somebody to fucking do this. Then, the indignity of this, I said, well, now what do I do with my old box and my old modem? I'm like, you gotta put it in the box and send it to FedEx. I'm like, what? Now I have to go to fucking FedEx. It's raining. I'm at my job. I'm walking down the street in the rain, carrying boxes. In fact, I walk to FedEx. I'm like, just take it. And they're like, like, what is this? I'm like, just take it. I don't want it. Get it away from me. And I'm waiting for something to go wrong where they say, we never got it. And then they try to charge me even more money. You know what? Fuck you, Spectrum. You're the enemy of the podcast. Go fuck yourself. It's just perfume on a pig. You change your name. It's just perfume on a pig. Dan.
Yes.
Do you have problems with your cable company?
As a matter of fact, as I was enjoying that, cable company representatives are also the only people that I will verbally abuse.
Yeah.
Them and cell phone companies. My network extended to that now. It's the only way they listen.
You're expanding your feelings.
Yeah, sometimes my friends have a telemarketer, Dan. That's what they refer to me as when I'm on the phone with one of those people, and I just go to town.
I mean, there must be so many notes written on my file in there.
Most of them say caution.
Yeah.
But you know what? A lot of times, like when the people were trying to like fix my signal, when I wasn't as verbally abusive to them. I was like annoyed, but that was like a different thing.
Well, because that you really need something from them. At that point, it's a point of no return.
Telling them, I said, look, your company's a piece of shit. But I said, you're doing a wonderful job, but you work for a piece of shit company. You know that.
I've said those words.
They're like, oh, yeah. And then they're like, oh, sorry for the way. But my favorite is when they go, so, when we get off the phone, within the next 15 minutes, you might get a call. And I said, look, you're doing fine. I said, but I'm not going to take any call about this company. If I do, you do not want me to answer any of the questions.
You know what? I found out, actually, the survey they send you, if you answer negatively, if they don't get perfect marks on everything, it really hurts everything about them, like the individual. And I used to give
That's how most companies work, is that like if you don't get perfect marks, it could screw over their bonuses, it could screw over, so I'll only do a survey if I know it's just like, and sometimes if I get good service, I'll actually ask, I go, is there a survey that I could fill out for you? And sometimes they go, oh, yes, because I know.
I've often given on those surveys in the past, there would be like 1 to 10. And everything that was about the individual, I'd give a 10.
Yeah.
And everything that was about the company, I'd give it.
And what I found out was it still hurt that individual, because I would
fucking bullshit.
I would give them 10s all the way down, and then they'd always say, "Would you recommend Time Warner Cable to anyone?" And I'd always go, "No," because you guys are the fucking worst. And I found out they're like, there was some poor schmuck on the phone, and he was like, "Yeah, that actually hurts my review." I was like, "Oh shit!" So now I actually just ignore those calls.
I just ignore those calls.
So you're in a Spectrum household right now, but I only use them for internet.
Hopefully they still upload this podcast.
Nah, yeah. So, but you're getting railroaded. You don't need that much internet. You have enough bandwidth
so much
We could
bandwidth.
we could run like 12 people out of your apartment.
Let's do it then.
Let's go. It'd be like Halt and Catch Fire. We're going to run the whole company out of
Let's
your apartment.
run everything out of my apartment.
Well, now you got down to 100. I don't know if I can...
Wait, you didn't actually tell us. Did you go up to 300 or down to 100?
No one needs 300.
I have 300. I love 300.
I have 300 now.
I have 30 here, and it's fine.
But I'm not paying more for the 300. I'm paying what I was paying for the 200, for the 300, because they got rid of my fucking phone, so it all evened out.
Honestly, if they offered me 500, I'd probably take it.
Yeah, if they offered it, if I don't have to pay a penny more, fine.
Hey, Sean, do you like my internet?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good internet.
It's good. It's fast.
It's the best, isn't it?
You know, I feel like I'm swimming in just like the Danube, just pushing you down.
But by the way, next time you come over, you're gonna have to re-put in all your.
Well, do you have that information? Or do we need to call Spectrum?
Oh my God, I don't know. And then they're like, "Do you want to change it?" I said, I can't think of a name to change it to right now. Just give me whatever fucking code I need."
Fuck Spectrum.
So I always like to end on an odd note, a weird note.
This seems like a Spectrum family.
Listen, I'm all behind this kid. This is a fucking smart kid. So while Bethany Howe napped on her couch last week, her daughter Ashland, a 6-year-old girl, decided to use her mother's thumb to unlock the phone to open up the Amazon app and charge $250 worth of Christmas presents for herself. The 6-year-old girl did this. Clever 6-year-old girl.
Yeah.
She's gonna be a future fucking jewel thief. I like that she's using like the thumbprint. Like there's something so futuristic.
It's like Catherine
about it.
Zeta-Jones in Entrapment.
But there's something so futuristic about like she's taking thumb. However, this is also worrying me because everything's gonna be thumb operated. People are gonna start cutting off thumb.
But I wonder if it's have to be like a warm, fresh thumb. Like if it's an old, dried up, desiccated thumb, will it still work?
Only one way to find out.
These are the questions I want the answer to.
That girl earned those presents, though.
She did.
Like, I hope she got to keep most of them. Because, she deserves it.
I mean, I figure they probably.
Can you imagine that customer service call to Amazon? Listen, you're not going to believe me.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's like the casino won't report its stuff's been stolen thing.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you can't call Amazon about this because you have to admit you got outfoxed by a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
No one's
Yeah,
gonna
but
do
somehow
it.
she went to the press. I mean, this got out somehow.
That was probably the 6-year-old too.
Yeah,
6-year-old's like,
she got a press release.
Again, it was like sending tweets out
She
about it.
guessed her mom's passcode on the laptop and emailed some.
No, but it's true to a certain point. Like, you don't even need passcodes anymore. I have an app for my phone that if I'm on Bluetooth, if I have my Bluetooth, my phone linked, if I walk away from my computer, it'll automatically lock my computer. But if you walk back to it with my iPhone, it'll unlock the computer. So someone just needs to steal my iPhone, walk up to my computer, and it'll open my computer.
I hope you're listening, thieves.
Yes.
What's that app called?
I'll tell you later.
But let me say this: the passcode is safer than the thumb. Yeah. Because the thumb, if this girl had to know some like 6-digit code her mother had come up with, she never would have broken into that thumb.
Yeah.
But with the thumb,
the thumb is mightier than the code, or the code is mightier than the thumb.
And on that note, Dan,
yes.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
One more time, tell the people where they can find you and your book.
Amazon.com, Real Empathy. Please check it out.
And again on Twitter
at Dan Freeman.
And your website?
Story-talk.com.
Boom. Sean.
I mean, technically, I am still on Twitter at the Sean David.
Here's the thing, though. Now you're starting to become obnoxious about not being on Twitter.
Well, I have no other social media.
You sent some email out about, like, you'd be in trouble if I was still on Twitter. I don't think the people on that email understood you weren't on Twitter. Like, that's the thing. So I think you should just get back on it because nobody cares.
I'm going to dip my toe in.
I'll tell you what, and here's the thing. I know Twitter's like, Twitter's so toxic. But like with like the Carrie Fisher thing, like that's what I really like about Twitter. Because it was like
and that's what I used to like too about it.
Yeah. Well, you would be the one saying toxic things when people died.
Listen.
Oh, you're one of those.
You're the toxic.
I might have gotten myself in trouble a couple times. I'll have to text things to Will that I would like to tweet, but need a two-step verification.
Oh, yeah. Hey, is this too offensive? Yes, you can't do that. Oh.
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at The Real Will Link. I'm hoping to be booking some shows soon because I have lots of... I'm trying to get back out there in the storytelling bullshit world.
There you go.
I've been a little out of it. I've only done only did like 3 shows in the last quarter of last year. So I need to step up my game.
And who better to help us step up our game than
With next week's guest, Megan Hayes. She is a returning champion to the show. She's going to come and help break down one of her favorite award shows, the Golden Globes, with us. But also, she is putting on a new storytelling show that she's going to be hosting. So she's going to tell us about that. And also, you saw her pretty face in a whole bunch of Best Buy commercials this holiday season. So we'll talk to her about that as well, as the residuals, I'm sure, are pouring in. And after that, I don't know.
we're working on it. We got some people in the hopper. Listen, it's just because it's the new year doesn't mean things change, people. And on that note,
Thank you, Dan.
Dan, thank you for the Will Sean podcast. I'm Sean David.
I'm Will Link.
Welcome to 2017. We're just getting started.